we need grants to.
Started up.
Say, let me know.
I'll sit to the side of you, take the middle.
Are we ready to go?
I'll let you.
Okay. Okay, then I will begin this meeting of the work session for the Orem Planning Commission on March 5th, 2025 at 4:36 PM in the City Council chambers. And we will start by discussing the general plan update, continue our conversation from that. And then we will have a discussion about neighborhood meeting notices. Grant?
Great, thank you. We got some slides prepared, and in our frenzy before the meeting today, I neglected to print out some of the documents from this, so I'll share those with you via email. But we just kind of want to continue this discussion from what we introduced last time. And so you'll see here kind of a refined timeline. We're going to go through the required elements per state statute and then kind of discuss thoughts you've had since last meeting to think about what chapters, topics, elements y'all as a commission would like to see part of the discussion, and then kind of how we envision a process shaping for the future of this update. So we've got here a kind of a ribbon timeline here for you. So the dates messed up when I transferred this over from one other document, so I apologize. There's supposed to be dates there in the middle of the ribbon showing the 2 days a month that we'll have meetings a month. One note from the calendar that we approved for the year is we elected to cancel the April 2nd Planning Commission due to spring break. So historically that's been done. So just we'll have that as part of the discussion tonight. If you want to continue meeting, if you're all going to be around and in town, we can hold and we'll have to advertise. Since it was not advertised, we'll have to modify the calendar and make that notice. But
Or do we keep that just a work session?
just a work session, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe. So just was something I'd bring up right away. But we envision 2 meetings a month. And on the bottom, we kind of have those required elements of what is required as kind of a preview. But there's 4 elements that are required per state statute to be included in the general plan. And then we kind of envision that following tonight's discussion, in between, I'll just skip ahead to this kind of template here. In between the meetings, staff will begin drafting comments and just a document from the discussion. And then starting probably next week, it'll be in a Google document format, and we'll invite you all to comment on that document as we share that. And then following, kind of to summarize those comments on the document, we'll come back. So this is kind of a template of how we see this process going, to have you comment on a draft. Then we'll have in-person commentary and discussion in the meeting work sessions to finalize maybe some of those comments. And then obviously we'll have multiple times and chances throughout this entire ribbon timeline, kind of towards September goal, to come back and review multiple drafts. So anyway, so this is kind of what we discussed internally. We wanted to kind of review that with you today, saying, major discussion topics, elements, we would bring those forward kind of in a 2-week format. It is a fast timeline, but obviously there's time for us to go back and, oh, hey, as we discuss something else, I guarantee we'll come back to multiple elements of how this all ties together. So when you're talking about land use, you have to talk about transportation. You're talking about transportation, you'll come back and talk about land use. When you're talking about land use and transportation, you're going to talk about housing, and when we're talking about the housing element, we'll talk about all those subjects and many more. So that's just the nature of land use and transportation in cities. And so, but if y'all are comfortable with this format, we're trying to put together like I said, a Google document to share with all you, and then you'll be able to comment on that as we begin drafting the summary of our discussions. And Jared, did you want to add anything, Jared?
No, just that, like Grant is saying, what we wanted to do is create a format in which we're talking about it in these meetings, but you're able to think about it during those interim times too, and come back to it. Sometimes live, you don't think of things, you come back later. You think of great comebacks when someone insults you later on. So think of it that way. You're going to come up with your best ideas sometimes when you're not with us in these meetings. We want you to be able to comment on that live document. So it's going to be think of it as a dumping ground for all your thoughts about what you've read in the staff materials that we put out in the commission packet. So when we've drafted things, we'll put them in that Google Doc, but we'll also have some items in the in the packets for you to look at too, specific things that we want you to focus on. So in each meeting as we go forward, you're going to have kind of two parts: finalizing comments or sort of synchronizing comments that you may have made at the previous meeting that we've tried to respond to, and then looking at new information that we've been drafting during that same 2-week period. So we got to keep the gist is that we have to synchronize and finalize stuff as we keep moving forward, so we don't miss sections. So each week, like Grant has them labeled, well, now this next meeting in May, for example, we've got to talk about housing element, but we might still be finalizing comments from the intro. And there's other stuff to talk about tonight too. But does that make sense? How we'll kind of have previous finalization and new stuff to talk about, and then comment during the interim 2 weeks.
Will we receive emails when there are substantive updates that
Yeah,
we need
we
to
can-
see? Because I don't want to have to check every day to.
Right.
See what
We don't
you-
want you to have to do that. So when we put new material in, as we're drafting stuff, if we have stuff during the week and we have it ready for you to look at and we think it would be helpful, we can just send you a quick email saying, hey, everybody, there's new paragraphs on whatever transportation or whatever it might be in the Google Drive. Take a look if you want, or we can even just attach those or whatever, a link. So
That would be appreciated. So kind of what I think they want feedback from us is if we're okay using Google Docs as a means of kind of talking through and sharing comments. Are you comfortable with using Google Docs? Okay, Rod? Yeah,
So it'll just be a shared document with and you'll all have permissions to make comment. We'll save the editing permissions for just in staff, because we don't want to try to edit 12 commenters, or you know what I mean? So you'll be making comments to the side, please include this kind of information or rethink this or whatever it might be. And then we'll make the actual edits as we go. So just leave the comments, because we'll open this up for council as well. There'll be a lot of people seeing it in real time as it goes forward. That's what we're hoping for.
And kind of what we've envisioned and is at least minimum 3 touch points with the council to kind of introduce, review with them, kind of overview, discuss with them where we're going, what we've talked about. And at the bottom, you see this, that's just a suggested order of the elements. That's not in any way me saying that's how we're going to talk about these. It's just, as I was labeling them, that's why I organized it. So if you wanted to talk about one of these elements first, or as we've discussed, the water element is pretty much already drafted, and we could table that to the end and just focus more on time and energy intensively right now, 2 week by 2 weeks, on some of these other elements. And then to continue, so review required elements. There's the state statute references if you're curious to write those down. Light reading. If you wake up in the middle of the night like me and you're just eager to read the state code, I'm just kidding. But per those codes, cities are required to prepare a general plan and include these elements: land use element, transportation, traffic, circulation element, moderate income housing element, and water use and preservation element. Now, as we've reviewed previously, there's other elements or structures or information we've included in previous general plans that is also addressed in state code and is actually specifically mentioned as other elements that the city may choose to include in their general plan are as follows: environmental elements, public services and facilities elements, rehabilitation, redevelopment, and conservation element. That's typically where may have historic preservation, an economic element, or recommendations for other adoption of land use, water ordinances, capital improvement plans, community development and promotion, any other appropriate actions, and the very last, any other element that the municipality considers appropriate to highlight in its general plan. For an update, I think we could, obviously focus on these required elements as our main energy, but not to rule any of these other optional elements or discussions out of the picture, as you all may consider as Planning Commission. Any comments or questions so far?
I was going to say on this list, I think one of the ones on here I'd like to talk more about is rehabilitation, redevelopment, and conservation elements and historic preservation, because I think those are elements that I think we have to consider as we're going through and making the general plan, because that is a lot of what Orem, especially our economic corridors are in need of.
Yeah, I was gonna say that to go along with that, the economic element, because our corridors are essential to maintain and preserve. As far as your timeline, I think housing should be pushed further back, since so many of the other pieces have to do with the impact on that. And, talking about transportation and other things like that might be more pertinent for what we're doing in a particular land use before we talk about the different types of housing in those areas.
Can I restate that, make sure I understand what you're saying? So you're
can.
saying as we,
I don't know if it'll come out as garbled as the way I did.
no, you did great. I just want to make sure that, because it makes a lot of sense to me. I never thought about it that way, but if transportation, like Grant was saying, all these other elements impact housing so much, if we do those first, our thoughts about housing might be more clear when we get to
Yeah.
that element. That
Like
makes some sense.
water, if we, just say we only had a well in this quadrant of
Sure.
the city, and we know that,
Yeah.
we should talk about it before we go ahead and put, 50 homes in a spot that only has well water for 2.
That makes a lot of sense to me. So,
So can we write that out in an order so that we have, we need to come away with concrete things. We need to stop just saying this is what we'd like. We need to be this is what we want. Or do you have a list?
I think it would be helpful if we paused now at this moment to say,
That's what I'm saying.
these are the other elements that we
Okay.
have to have these required. Here are the other 3 or 4, whatever it is, elements that we want you to look at and include. And then, let's get an order down, at least as a draft, and we can change our minds, right? But let's get an order down first. That helps us out.
Yeah.
And I did have, this is the existing just chapters and topics, or maybe quote unquote elements,
Yes.
that just for reference, and then I'm glad to toggle back and forth between the other lists as well.
And there's what's in the appendices as well. If any of those we want to move. Well, I guess none of those are.
So
Where
we've
is
heard.
the where is the moderate income right now?
It's
folded into
included
housing?
in
It's part
chapter
of
4
housing.
it's part of the housing. Yeah, that's where we've put it.
Jim?
I was going to say, you've obviously for some reason listed these in the sequence that you have with your understanding and rationale. So you have a closer look than we do. And so I think to buck what you've outlined here without maybe the thought that you've given it, I think it would be well if you were to push back if you felt a need to do so.
Well, if I recall, as far as how they're formatted here, it may just be as they are listed in the state statute as this, the community, the city shall
Okay.
include
I see.
this element, this element, this element,
Okay.
this one. I think one of the other slides, I may have just flipped them around.
Okay.
But
I do kind of think the first one ought to be land use.
I was gonna
Because
say
it's the one that most people
land
relate to
use.
and want to reference. And so if it's early on in the pages that you're reading, whether it's on your phone or in a book, that's probably best if land use is first.
One, it's our high level discussion.
Yeah,
right?
it hits
Yeah.
all.
And so that sets the
Yeah.
tone for all the other sections. So I agree.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Urban design, that one probably could be pushed to the end after we do economics and after we do other things. So would you want transportation next?
Yeah.
And then
Mal-
Economics, yes.
Sorry, before we order them, are there any other ones that want?
Yeah.
that-
Oh,
Do we have
yeah.
the required, we know you want economic develop, you want an economic element, an economic development element. We know that you want, what was the other one, the rehabilitation,
Revitalization.
and that's not one that we've had. It's been probably components of other things, but it's not been its own element, I guess. So
In a sense of rehabilitation, redevelopment, that could be combined with an economic element. Oftentimes that is a portion of, when you're talking about economic development in the community, that is an element of that, of.
You've already got economic in there. You've got economic and then economic element. So what do you mean, the difference of the two? If you go back a slide here, let's see.
One has historic preservation, which I think is a subtle shift, right? Because sometimes we're losing economic development to preserve culture and history.
that may be true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's some more detail as far as in the state code. There's some other elements of how they describe and have other lists. I just kind of took the elements themselves. So I'm happy to bring some of those back. And if that adds some more context to our considerations as we discuss that topic, I think that could be helpful.
Yeah, rehabilitation, redevelopment, and conservation apply to everything. They apply to
Yeah.
economics, they apply to housing, they apply to our urban design and what we want our
Correct.
urban scape to be like, or our suburban landscape to be.
Maybe it would be fair to say
budget
we could keep it as its own element right now. And as we start drafting, if it starts to feel like it's just really a component of economic development as an element,
put
we
it in
move it
there.
back in.
Because I think if we're talking overriding principles, if that's really what our goal of pulling these down and making them very specific guides to how we rewrite our code or how we deal with some of our other general master plans, then I think redevelopment has to be a piece.
Redevelopment?
Redevelopment.
Yes,
Yeah.
I fully align with you on that, because that's what Orem is heading to with how much we have to redevelop.
Correct. I was going to mention that too.
It will be setting the tone properly from the beginning, so we don't end up with the 2014 fiasco.
Yeah.
So yeah, redevelopment, it should be one,
Yeah.
definitely.
we-
Redevelopment and economics should be
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
yeah,
together.
should we do redevelopment then economics?
Yeah, redevelopment and economics, because
We might be able to
adding,
Switch them, yeah.
adding the whole historic preservation right below redevelopment, give it a different understanding tone than what it really is.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
We have to set the tone correctly for redevelopment, because that will include rezoning, changes in
Mhm.
use, not just for historic, as it kind of may lead into the way it looks.
We could consider even breaking some of that out, putting it, a lot of it in the economic development, but some of it in the parks and public services, because it's more historic, which ends up being kind of a public
And-
thing.
That's where I almost say having it, or doing it early, like we're talking about, coming up with what our, basically our skeleton for redevelopment is, and then applying that as we work through some of the other sections. I think it'll have a lot of interplay.
I think we should also add some guardrails and levers
Mhm.
to that redevelopment, so it doesn't go out of hand and causes the same
Yeah, like we had.
discontent that we had for longest, which caused the whole city to derail on what a master plan is.
Mhm.
It's upon us to put those guardrails in place early and identify what we really need to look as a vision in that redevelopment. What does it look like? It definitely does not look like making people's land legal non-conforming.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, because that's,
And that's
That
why I
was a
think
big
it should
deal.
be its own section, right?
yes.
So
So
either.
land use,
Yeah,
rehabilitation, redevelopment, then transportation and economics, or economics, transportation.
I know that's the debate. Which order do we want to do?
I
that
do
in?
economics and transport. We've gone in depth over transportation.
Transportation.
And so if there's decisions that are discussed and made around economic development that would warrant a change to the plan, then that's a good time to address after.
So move,
But if you talk about it, then you got to come back in, and
to move transportation after economics and redevelopment.
that's what I would do.
I like
Okay.
that.
Just because they seem so synonymous, you need good traffic flow for good economic
Absolutely.
prosperity, honestly.
So excuse my ignorance, but I'm really confused on what economics means in a general plan document. Specifically, I don't know how it aligns with our current code and the current organization of the city. Are we in this telling the city how they perhaps need to reorganize? Are we talking about changes to city code, which obviously will be approved by the city council? Is that the purpose of this section?
I think from one perspective, and like I said, there's when I pulled that from the state code, there was maybe another element, some other descriptors in the state code of what you may include in that economic element. But I think from one perspective, the code aside, in a way, yeah, the city relies heavily on sales tax revenue for the city budget. And so in essence, the economic element is going to be structured around how do we encourage more, how can we attract more economic development to the businesses coming into the city? How can we preserve the existing business corridors? And then, yeah, if there was ways that we could enhance the code to do so by preserving or enhancing, that would, I think, be a portion of this element or this chapter.
Okay, because there is so much more that we could be doing that we're currently not. And so I can support that if that's the ultimate focus.
I'm going to channel a little bit of Gary here and because economics is spread across several different things. We in fact have an entire appendix that's the economic development plan. It was what, 3 years ago? We went through that and updated that one. So, and we've got laws and all that sort of stuff. And the point here with the general plan is to make the framework. Then we would go and update the master plan and statutes as we needed to. So this is saying, what do we really want? What do we want the future of Orem to look like? And making that basis here. There is a little blurb of what the economic chapter is supposed to cover. This chapter generates goals and strategies for attracting and maintaining beneficial economic activity in the city.
Pretty
Nice and
broad.
vague. Yeah.
Well, and that's fine. It just, to me, economic development is not having another restaurant move into the mall. My 2 cents.
But I think we need to talk about what some of those strategies are. What do we see? Do we see ourselves maintaining our base? Do we want to attract certain things? Because, certain higher end retail takes certain types of things. If we want certain types of jobs or business or office parks or whatever, that takes certain things in the city to be focused on.
Welcoming,
sure.
to be welcoming to it, yeah.
Yeah.
And we, as we try to balance to the best of our ability, keeping the city alive and not repeat the whole Provo Mall issues.
Mhm.
That's another thing.
Yeah.
And regardless, the University Mall is bringing a good amount of revenue now. Well, we debated that a long time ago.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, to be clear, I'm not, early on when I was appointed to the commission, we talked about the business development individual came in and talked to us in one of our working groups, and we were celebrating
Cheesecake Factory.
Cheesecake Factory. And like, that is not business development. Business development is going after whatever we choose, high tech, other businesses that would also contribute to the economic well-being of our city.
But there's, sorry.
And so, I think this is an opportunity for us to make some recommendations where I see we could broaden our base and benefit our community at the same time.
And I think that's where a good discussion on economics would be good
Yeah.
and in digging down into some of these.
I definitely align with you on
Principles.
that, especially like follow the footsteps of PG and Lehigh and what they're doing on their corridor. That's business development, inviting large
Yes.
scale businesses to come in and build much larger properties and then we let them handle how they rent it. But, I align with you on that vision for sure.
And we have so much to offer in terms of,
Yeah.
talent and technology, et cetera.
Absolutely. And I think we could better set up a framework. That's the goal, right? To set up a better framework so that we can actually do that. So just for time purposes and moving on. So right now, intro land use, economics, redevelopment, we can switch those orders too. Transportation, housing obviously needs to be a big one. Should we do housing next and then Parks and Rec?
Do you want a Parks and Recreation element? These are elements that aren't required. So we're
Yeah,
back in
right.
the territory of deciding, are there other elements that so we know we want to do the non-required, we know we want to do economic development, we know we want to do redevelopment and rehabilitation. And we know that we want to do, forgetting one, no, I'm not. What other ones do you want to do? Parks and Recreation, urban design, these are all elements we can include. And they don't have to be 16 pages long each. They can be simple elements.
We could even have like I don't know, I don't know what to call it, but other important, like it says, other element the municipality considers appropriate or improvement plans, community development, we could couch it under that. Community promotion, enhancing Family City USA, could be that chapter, right?
Okay.
And how do we do that? And then you could say, these are the ways that the city is looking to enhance Family City USA through urban design, through this, through this, through this.
That's true. You could break it down that way. I think that that's what we should be including. What are the elements for Family City USA? What elements focus on that, emphasize that? I mean, Parks and Recreation.
Yeah.
I think that's an easy
Yeah.
one to like.
Public services, parks and recreation, urban design, kind of couch under that kind of theme very, very nicely.
Considering how much we've invested in parks in the city, I think it would be negligible to not include it in the general plan.
And there are,
And the need for more too. We're
Yeah.
still looking for seven other locations, as we spoke last.
Yeah, the historic preservation, I just noticed is inside of urban design.
Yeah, they put some of it's in housing, some of it's
Yeah.
is split. And so
I guess
that
it
might be
depends on the
something.
type of preservation we're going for.
Yeah, it kind of spans a few different areas of where historic preservation can apply.
Yeah, because you can designate a home as having historical significance and it's still owned by an individual, but it's protected under statutes.
And with designations, historic preservation wise,
Yeah.
that actually can be an economic benefit to homeowners because it can qualify them, well, for tax credits, right?
Right.
Existing tax credits.
Who makes those designations? The city can do that, or is that?
The city will do that. The Historic Preservation Commission would do that in partnership with, they usually typically a consultant would be hired to do the survey work. They survey the house, talk about the history of the house, and then it's filed to the
And
national.
who funds that?
The national, typically the commission would probably fund that through the budget of the commission. But there's grants though that we could apply for to assist with that.
Mhm. And where did we put transportation again? Is it right after economic development? And
I was
redevelopment?
gonna go back through the list and say, what order do we want it?
Yeah, it's certainly, even though I used Lehigh and PG as a good example for economic redevelopment, but I can't use them as a great example for traffic failure. So we have to align, we have to be, I deal with this every day.
Mhm.
It's a nightmare. So we have to be aware of it as we put the guardrails to make sure traffic is a big aspect.
Agreed. So right now, we'd start with land use. Then it sounds like everyone wants to go to redevelopment. Then economics. Then transportation. And then housing.
Water.
Oh, where do we want to put water? I know we have to add it. I know that that's,
Yeah,
do you
it's
want
not
water
obviously
before
on the
housing?
existing list, but
Because
we would
it's
have to
urban.
add it.
Okay.
To the need, right?
That's fine. I was following these lists.
I don't think it's gonna be overly big discussion. but-
Yeah, water, housing. Then Parks and Rec, public services and urban design last.
Kind of as, I don't know, I'll keep those down individually listed. But maybe we could talk, as we get there, we could talk about what that structure looks like as
Yeah.
far as in the document.
I think as topics to hit on, I think, because I think it's easier to go through this and kind of say, we like this, we don't like this as a framework starting from there.
Cool.
So that would be 9, excluding today. That's 9 topics. So.
we'll probably have to double up a couple of them in those 2-week periods, but some of them are smaller. So we'll work it that way.
But some of them may take 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Some of them might. The
I-
economics discussion, for example, gets broad about bringing employment, et cetera. And so it's a big discussion.
Yeah, and then.
I hope housing takes time too.
Housing will take a lot of time. Housing probably will be its own meeting. It probably should be its own work session.
Yep.
And then you also asked about spring break, the first week in April. Is anyone going to be out of town the first week of April? But otherwise, everyone else is here. Okay, because we could, are you gonna be?
She's
Yeah,
due.
You have a really good
Yes, you
reason to
do.
be gone, so we will forgive you for not being here.
We could always convene in the hospital.
We're gonna
Love that.
teach her to be a little planner from the very beginning. Yes. Newest member of Orem that's going to learn.
I'll be here first week.
First week, okay. So we could do a work session, and I think we should keep it a work session if it's not already on our schedule, unless there's something major, but I don't think there's many projects.
We'll be okay to just do first.
Okay. So we'll plan for a work session on April
I think it's
3rd?
second.
Second,
I believe it's the
and it
second.
was right in there.
It wasn't on the calendar, so I kind of double checked the date, so.
Do we have any reappointments by that time?
We should not. My understanding is May's the 1st. So. Okay. Do you want to continue on?
Yeah, I just make sure we're still good on time. For the discussion today, we're going to talk about an introduction chapter. First area of focus is to bring in the city council areas of focus that are relevant to the general plan and include and align those with the direction of the general plan. And then just a discussion kind of, sometimes there's a separate executive summary for a general plan. Or does the introduction chapter also serve that purpose in this case? And then just other thoughts about what you all thought for what else to include in the introduction. Whether right now there's a history, there's a brief, is that more brief history? And then we could separate that out as a separate history element of the history of Orem's development, right? So these are the areas of focus that I pulled from their area of focus that I think are really focused on some specific elements that tie to the general plan, dependable infrastructure, and then they have these bullet points, and then safe, livable, connected, and engaged neighborhoods, and then those bullet points. And so I think what we had thought was to introduce the general plan process through addressing the council areas of focus, and that's the general plan is a very important plan to address those topics from the city council. Maybe, there is specific bullet for a specific area, right? And street, maybe that is as part of the transportation, right, element that we focus on that specifically in the transportation element. And then there's obviously housing general plan update, which we obviously are going to be doing as part of the general plan update. So, but I think there's some other ways that we could include some of these focuses in discussions of the elements. So I don't know if there's any other comments from you.
I'm wondering what this look at 950 North thing is.
I don't know because I'm not that familiar with 950 North, but let me give you, so for our purposes, we were looking at the council's areas of focus, these kind of broad principles, and saying they probably provide a good architecture to say this is how the general plan's elements can be structured to support those goals that the city is setting for itself. How can the general plan support dependable infrastructure and safe, livable, connected, and engaged neighborhoods? How does it do all those things? And the introduction can be a sort of an executive summary of the plan by talking about the different elements that are going to be presented in the plan that a person's going to find there and how they support these goals that Orem has. Does that make sense?
Well,
So
because
some of
those
them
roads
more-
were pulled out of the transportation plan,
Yeah.
those roads.
Some of
So I'm
those,
wondering why they're there.
some of those might not be appropriate in the intro. We're just finding out what they've got.
I'm just showing the areas of focus.
And is the new active transportation master plan an updating of the one we just did, or is that the trails and bike one, pedestrian and bike plan?
Bike, bike and ped used to be called bike and ped, and now it's called active transportation. So
That's
so
good
that
to know.
would be that update to that plan.
Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, we're not going to probably do that update as part of the general plan as well, but that would be, we could address that in the transportation element.
But for example, that statement, define a trail system in Orem. So in the Parks and Rec element, in the Parks and Recreation element, there would be a good moment to talk about trails and how we connect them and what our goals should be and how we can support those. It's that kind of thing that would make it make sense in the intro.
I feel like these things are really more that we need to know and understand as we're looking at these elements, as opposed to something to put in the front of this, unless we're
This-
saying dependable infrastructure is important to us, safe, livable, connected, engaged neighborhoods is important to us. Did they have any economic area focuses? Focus, I guess.
I have the document somewhere in here, but yeah, there's
I'll
there's some statements about protecting the commercial interests along State Street, et cetera. Yeah. So that stuff's all in there. These areas of focus, they'll make a good a sort of a first framework. The larger points, not the specifics,
Not the specific-
but the
yeah.
big larger points. And there are 3 or 4.
I'm happy to share that full list with you all.
I was gonna say, could we
Yeah.
get a copy of that so we
Yeah,
can
definitely.
work on it, work with it?
So just to keep your thoughts going, do we do a separate summary? Do we, what do you all see is important for the introduction to include? And then I can itemize that and start the drafting right away. So.
The key difference kind of would be that in a lot of introductions in general plans, I would even say typically they begin with a history of the city. That Orem was founded, et cetera, talks about the geography a little bit, goes through some statistics, the demographics of the city. It's an introduction to the city as opposed to an introduction to the plan. And we had talked before about having something like the history of Orem that we have pretty well written in the current general plan being made an appendix to the plan instead, and having the intro be an intro to the plan, which is how it would be kind of an executive summary. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you haven't read 13 pages by the time you get to the executive summary of the plan. I think that's unreadable and puts people off.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn the question a little bit over to us in the sense that what did you like about the introduction? What didn't you like? What thoughts did you have, if you had any? Because I do have a couple comments, but I want to hear from everybody else as well. Of course I have comments. Stop smiling.
It's all good.
It's all good. Yeah, so if anyone had thoughts about the intro.
I concur with what Jared just said.
Yeah.
That long history really serves no useful purpose and people will be less likely to dig.
And do you like the idea of it being in the appendix?
Yep.
I agree.
See, now to me, it's makes it interesting to have that background before you proceed. That explains where we've come from, why we're here now, and to know the history. To me, it draws you in. That's how I see it. But it doesn't matter. I mean, if it's in the appendix, someone can go back and read it there as well.
I personally like some of the history. I don't like the legal nonsense.
Yeah, that's the
It
first.
just, it has no practical purpose, honestly. And nobody cares. Nobody opens this to say, oh, why did you do it?
No, that's the first
Obviously,
thing.
because somebody probably made us do it.
Yeah. The whole thing could sound less legal.
Yes.
Like, I think the whole thing all the way through it needs to be written. So any person in Orem could
Citizen.
pick it up, every citizen could pick it up, read it and say, oh, okay. So this is what we mean by urban design.
One thing I like about the history is it helps you understand evolution to some degree.
Yeah.
We were completely agrarian, and we introduced, industrial aspects into our community because of Geneva Steel. And then we started to grow in commercial through the mall. And then while we had influence from BYU, UVU really grew us into an educational hub as well. So it kind of gives us an idea of why things have kind of developed the way they have, whether they were good choices or not. You get a good understanding of, okay, because the school's there, I can see why maybe this happened, or because Geneva's there, I can see this. And now that Geneva's gone, without that history, why are all these little brick houses? Why are the trailer parks right there? That's why. because we had an industrial park that had popped up in the forties and all of a sudden we needed to house all the steel workers. So I think it's valuable in that aspect and helps set the tone, personally. And then I just think it'd be nice to have kind of a summation of this is who we've been and how we got here and where we want to go.
Maybe we could, and I like all those thoughts. Because the history can be really interesting. Maybe we could make it sleeker and kind of blend it with an intro to the plan, the way you're saying. So
Yeah.
here's how it's founded and went through these changes. And you can, and by the way, you can find a more detailed history in the appendix. And this is the plan this year. If we can make it sleeker and just
More fluid, it just kind of comes together and
More-
we don't
more-
have to-
more
we don't
readable.
just have to say Geneva
less,
section.
a little shorter, more summarized and less detail. And then put the detail in the appendix.
And my problem with it was I got to the end. I love the history because it did help me understand Orem better when I read
Yeah.
it a while ago and rereading it. But then I got to the end and I said, well, so what do we do about it? They're like, it's declined in some places on State Street. And it was like, okay, so wherefore, what for? And I think that can be a good springboard, saying this is where we've come from. We are a historical city. We've been a small city. We are not anymore. And this is how we can build ourselves into the 21st century or whatever. We do have to get to another topic real quick. Is there any other quick comments concerning the introduction anyone wants to share?
I was just gonna say, I think the history helps us understand density,
Mhm.
honestly.
Mhm.
Between Geneva and the school, we packed in probably more people than we should have in the space. But that helps you understand why, because a lot of it was initially, we need housing and then we need short-term housing, and that's kind of evolved to the way it is.
Well, doesn't the history really tell us who we are culturally?
Yes,
And, I can't imagine that we would plan something moving forward without some understanding as to where we've been.
yeah.
Considering that residents, most of them in Orem, have lived here, I'm sure, for many years. I think it's very important that we have that history to build upon in some way.
Those are good. Those are great. That's the kind of input we needed to get a start on that. We started this week last week trying to draft an intro based on what we had thought, and it's hard.
Yeah.
But this is helpful to know kind of how we want to keep some of those elements in. I do think they need to be foreshortened a little bit, but we can do that.
But it's very interesting. To me, it is.
Yeah.
Just every little element of it is great interest.
It's
And
great stuff.
And I think the intro, like most writing, you'll get through the whole thing and then you'll go back and rewrite your intro.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah, I fully expect that to happen.
fully expect that to happen.
Yeah.
The one other comment I wanted to make about it was we have these little breakouts, like section 1.1.2, that's the contents. And I was wondering if we could make whatever we end up with as our content pages, if we could put little brief descriptions with them so that people, no one's going to look at section 1.1.2 to figure out what urban design is. But if you have so people know that this is, if you're interested in finding out, economics, this is what's covered in the economics plan or
Makes it easier to find. right?
Yeah,
To go
'cause-
right to it. Mhm.
these are just words.
More detailed table of contents.
Yeah, or just even short little paragraphs next to them that explain what they each are.
That's a great.
I think just a better fleshed out table of contents page that,
Yeah.
yeah, that's great.
Kind of
I
like.
I was gonna say, I like Mike's point of explaining the density with the introduction. I think that with, marketing and good copy in a document, you've really got to hold the hand of the reader through the documents.
Yep.
And I think it'd be really good to, look up these headers, but like explain, it's like history of the city dash density housing. It's like give that little nudge in the direction of, hey, this is why this exists and this is why it's in here. Like Mike was saying, like, yes, explain that, but make it obvious in the header as well.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay. We will, thank you for the discussion. We'll continue next time. We'll start with, what did we decide for next time? Intro. Well, no, we just did the intro,
We'll review comments for
Oh,
the
yeah.
draft that you'll see.
right? And then we will start on redevelopment next time.
Great.
Okay, we're going to take a couple minutes to talk about neighborhood meeting notices, which is also on our agenda, but Mike, would you like to have a brief discussion about this? We are not, and being careful here that we are talking about procedural issues and not the substantive nature of what we're discussing. That's my warning. Go, Mike.
So I just, we had that discussion about changing things because people were not getting notice or there's short time frame in notification. And one thing I've noticed is we're not really adamant about paying attention to those notices. Timeline, did you give proper notice? Did you hold your meeting? And I think we really need to start holding people accountable and push back when they don't meet the criteria.
Mhm.
So if it's clear that you didn't, give 7 days, then go back and do it again. We're not gonna hear from you until you do what you're required to do. If the report is you didn't actually do a presentation at your neighborhood meeting, well, go back and do it, because it is a requirement. It's not just a check.
Has that been a problem in the past though, where that has not been?
A little bit here and there, yeah. We have one that's coming our way that gave 5 days notice.
On and off. Most of the
instead of 7.
notices, the notice is such a poor quality.
Yeah,
When again, there's such poor quality. It's embarrassing. I can't read them.
I looked at the
Nobody can-
Wilkerson Farm one for a good like 30, 40 seconds before I figure out before
What
I
it
could
was.
see where
It's
the
not
time
clear.
was.
yeah. Anyway, so it frustrates me that people are not getting at least the opportunity to see what's coming their
Yeah.
way. And I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we push back on when we see things that are not there.
Agree.
And we'll touch on it a little bit more too, when we're talking about item 4.2. Because we continued our discussion about the neighborhood notice requirements and meeting requirements. So. Was there anything else?
No, that's the big
Okay.
thing until, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else, anything else before we? Okay,
Right.
then we will
So,
adjourn. Oh, go
I
ahead.
was just hitting the button here. I think Brendan made a very important comment. As we write this document, I think first and foremost, we need to consider who the target audience is. Who are we trying to educate? And that will determine the style, length, content that we make.
I think the style should include a who, what, when.
Yeah.
Who's doing this, what they're doing, and when is it getting done, as like a bracket on its own. So everybody sees the 3 who, what, when location, and then after that, the description and the map can come in a different place, but it has to be big enough to capture the attention to see if they want to get involved or not. But the way it sits, you're right. I have to go pull a map sometimes because the map on it is not clear. And if I wasn't in the planning commission for this long, I would have looked at it and just in 15 seconds, like, I can't read this. I don't know what even that is, and
Yeah.
get rid of it.
Good copy is the background of marketing and advertising, and they're one of the most important aspects in the private sector. It's ridiculous that our citizens don't get that benefit.
And bad copies are designed to make people give up from 15 seconds.
Exactly, and it's designed to hide information they don't want to find.
Okay, we'll talk about it more during our meeting. So we will adjourn for 6 minutes and start our meeting at 5:30.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Okay, we're going to call this meeting of the Orem City Planning Commission to order at 5:33 PM on March 5th, 2025 in the City Council Chamber. And we're going to begin with an invocation by Commissioner Hawks.
Our Father in heaven, as we meet together as citizens of Orem this evening, we express our gratitude for this opportunity, for the privilege we have of living in this wonderful community. We are grateful for those who render service to protect us and to bless our lives. We pray for the residents of this city. We pray that we will be wise in our deliberations, that we will make decisions that will further increase the safety of this city, the prosperity of this city, and the peace of this city. And we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So we'll begin with item 3.1, which are our consent agenda items. The only thing on our consent agenda is our meeting minutes from February 19th, 2025 meeting. If there's any comments, concerns, need to take it out of consent. Okay, do we get a motion on our consent items?
I move that we approve the minutes from February 19th, 2025.
We approve the
Consent
consent,
item.
yeah, we approve the consent agenda items.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's,
We change it, yeah.
fix it. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Consent agenda items of that February 15th or February 19th, 2025.
Second.
Okay. Jim moved and Mike seconded that we approve the consent agenda items. Tyson?
Aye.
Rod?
Aye.
Jerry? Jerry, consent agenda?
Aye.
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 Okay. Those are unanimously passed. And then we will begin with item 4.1, which is a public hearing regarding Canyon Park. It's a request to amend the land use and zoning map designation of 23.3 acres of property located generally at 1203 North, 630 East from professional services to low density residential and from PD6 to R8. Jared? Oh,
Thank you.
Can I make a comment really quick?
Sure.
So this, in our workshop meeting, this is one of our culprits. We have a postmark of the 6th for a meeting on the 11th. 5 days at best, because postmark means it's just been received, not mailed out. Because of that, I would like to see us reject this early and just make them hold a proper neighborhood meeting before discussion.
so do you mean table it until they've had a proper,
Absolutely, yeah.
that might be a table or continue depending on how we figure it. What does our current,
I'll defer to Gary.
okay. I was gonna say, what does our current law say about that?
Sandy wants to push a decision on the Canyon Park area.
Due
If we want to
to,
continue or if we want to table.
due to the meeting notice not being sent out in a timely fashion.
Oh, I don't know. I'll have to pull it up. You have it?
Probably.
Yeah.
If that's in fact something you can table it for, then you would want to open the hearing, table it, but I'll.
I've technically opened the hearing. We just have not had staff report yet.
I just thought I'd bring it up before we went through the whole plan, because there's no point in hearing it if it's gonna be pushed and come back.
So it's-
To be clear, we're talking about if the notice that went up to the neighbor for the neighborhood meeting didn't meet requirements. Is that what I'm looking for?
Correct.
I believe we discussed it was a minimum of 7 days and, it's debatable whether it's 7 days in their hands or not, but it's clearly only 5 days. There's no way anybody probably got this on time.
So the postmark date is February 5th, 6th for the meeting on February the 11th.
Yes.
Apologize, just a minute more, okay?
No problem, take your time.
I understand.
Is there a clarification between business days versus non-business days?
That would be a good discussion for item 4.2.
Yeah, if there is, then it's even further in
Right.
Yeah.
violation.
Right.
I don't know if that might be that is a really good question for our discussion in item 4.2. And along the same lines, I did.
Maybe I could pose the question while they're looking it up, but
22:1.
are there people that are here that object to that?
Well, this is procedural and this is on us.
Mhm.
And yes, we understand that the public did come out to comment on this and we can discuss that also as part of this, but we need to figure out if this is even something that we can talk about.
Okay,
I mean, it's obviously a requirement, so that's why we make them do it. If they
Of
haven't met
course.
the requirement.
Right, and that's what we're trying to determine if they met the requirement. Yeah.
Okay, so we're in 22.15G. Neighborhood meeting must be held with submission of application. 1,000 feet, 500 feet of attached notice on letterhead.
At least 1 week prior to the date of the meeting.
That's the language that we have. Provided at least 1 week prior to the date of the meeting. So I don't know what to tell you. That's the only language. There's nothing more specific.
Yeah, so a week is 7 days and we have 5. So
From
they haven't
postmark.
met their criteria.
From postmark.
Yeah, if we count that, that's this, I
It's-
mean, that's the only legal thing you can
That's the only
count.
thing we have, right?
Yeah.
As we've discussed, your house does not equal.
Well, I mean, yeah, as far as I mean, I believe from a court perspective, a postmark date is a legal deliverance. So it's 5 days.
It gets more complicated than that, depending on when it's in the mail and who sends it, but yes, you're
Sure,
right.
yes. But it was the 6th, the meeting was
It was
on
on
the
the
11th, so there's only 5 days.
That's not a
Which
week
is-
before.
Yes, which is my point.
Gary's pondering. Do you have thoughts?
Thoughts as to,
Whether or not we can push this back to another neighborhood meeting?
if
Continue.
the planning commission wanted to continue it, I think you can. I also think you can go forward with it.
Okay,
Anyway, we keep talking about appropriateness and actually giving people the proper notice, which is our next item. I just feel like that we need to be good stewards and actually hold them accountable when they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I didn't even get it on the 11th. I got it on the 16th or something. So clearly it doesn't show up in time for some of us because I wouldn't have even got it after 7 days, but how many people would have liked to come? Would have liked to been informed and spoke to them, didn't get to. Anyway, so I personally think we should table it until they hold a proper meeting with proper notice.
and going off of that, I would say that their notes on their meeting minutes of what happened at that meeting are woefully inadequate. When your literal comment is feedback from the neighborhood was gathered for consideration. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't help us. That doesn't give us any idea of what happened at the neighborhood meeting either. So, well, we could go either way. So we could continue this here, the hearing. Or we could decide to just
think-
push it back. Go ahead.
I think we should continue with the hearing for the sake of people who drove all the way out here for that, but
Okay.
yeah, I'm ready to continue.
Jim?
And I concur with that. I don't know what purpose it serves to kick this down the road unless some object. I mean, Mike has.
Yeah.
But beyond that, are others an objection? Do they feel the same way Mike does? I don't know.
Jerry, how do you feel about continuing?
I think that we need to change it, but for this meeting, I think we go ahead.
Rod,
I'm okay to proceed.
Jason?
Yeah, well, considering the situation of this, I'm okay to proceed with the hearing. I understand you fully, but and if the code was not followed for more than one item, which the notes and the notice, the times, then there's more than one infraction. But definitely would love to hear what's going on.
And again, we'll address this more in item 4.2.
And that's why we're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, then if we'll continue on with the
That's fine.
public hearing at this time. Okay, thank you, Jared.
All right. As you said, I'll just kind of repeat for the record as we move forward with the hearing. This is a public hearing for what we're calling the Canyon Park rezone. You're familiar with this. It's come before you before as a different request. This is a request to amend the land use and zoning map of those properties, of those acres in that property for an R8 subdivision purpose, as opposed to having any other component, not a specific PD zone, but R8. The current zoning of the property is PD6. I believe you're all familiar with the property, these 23.3 acres. The PD6 zone is what's currently in place. The general plan, the land use element of the general plan calls this out for professional services. It's right in this area, but surrounding it is low density residential. They're asking for that designation instead to support the R8 zone that they're looking for. They did provide a couple of concept plans. There's only one significant difference between the two plans. In one of them, there are 77 lots. In the other, there are 79. That gives you an idea of how many single family conforming lots could be created on this property in a likely scenario, 77 to 79. Different things change, road layouts, et cetera, but there are two roads around the properties that provide access so you can access the majority of the property and subdivide it so you see these kinds of yields. You would expect that. All of the lots that they've shown these concepts in both of them meet or exceed that 8,000 square feet. A couple of the lots go upwards of 16,000 square feet just around corners, et cetera, but they're all in that range. The PD6 zone that's in place right now is a completely distinct, different zone from what's being proposed. So it feels a little funny to compare the two zones, but I think it's important to do that. The PD6 zone is a research and development park. It was created for this specific research park. It has specific requirements for the architecture of the buildings, for the parking standards, for the improvements and the way they're put in. And then everything else besides that refers to the business park zone, regulations for height, et cetera. The R8 zone is a single family development zone. So you don't have multifamily. That's not a possibility. It's only single family detached lots. They have to be 8,000 square feet. And you have those other allowable uses like churches and schools and public facilities, et cetera. So that's the distinction between the two zones. The applicants also provided some photographs of homes that are likely to fit on these kinds of lots and kind of reflect the area and the market that they see there. You'll have those in your packets as well. And then again, just as a reminder from the beginning of the public hearing, this is a recommendation that you would make to the city council. So this is the zone change, not that subdivision we were looking at, but that concept. That's just a concept to show you what kind of yield that the R8 zoning might give. The actions you can take would be to recommend approval of the land use and zoning map designation amendments, recommend denial of those, or you could continue the hearing to another date. And we always say the same thing there. You can continue that request for further review, additional information, or public comment as you feel is needed to make that proper recommendation. So, do you have any questions for staff about what's been proposed in the R8 version of this request?
No questions? Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Is the applicant here? Yeah, come forward.
Afternoon, evening, Planning Commission, Brian Prince with Tri Point Homes. Happy to answer any questions you have about the application.
So what is the average lot size, square footage?
It is a little over 10,000 square feet for these concepts. Like Jared mentioned, they're concepts only. It's a requirement of the application. We've got to go do the full engineering to know kind of the final lot layout, but the This is based on survey data, so it's fairly accurate. Like Jared mentioned, the smallest lot in here is a little over 9,000 square feet. Minimum is 8,000, but because of the setbacks and other constraints to have a buildable lot, they end up being a little larger.
Rod?
So if I recall, the previous concept, when you came a few months ago,
Correct.
there was only one road in and out of the subdivision. Am I recalling that correctly?
No, there's always been
There's always
the
been two?
vehicular connections haven't changed. Those are exactly where they were before. So there's always been a proposed access off of 1200 and then another there on Research Way.
Thank you for helping me.
Yeah.
Any other questions or?
Are there plans for green space in this workup?
Say that again.
Are there plans for green space in this workup?
We've got we've got a pathway there in that top kind of left corner. That is it came from the previous plan. There is a stormwater pipe that is existing that will be rerouted through this proposed public right of way and connect back into 1200 North. And so the stormwater line and then a culinary water line loop will run through that area.
Great.
And so it's kind of will serve, the vision is it'll serve as utility easement area as well as a pathway.
Great, thanks.
But other than that, yeah, no, this is standard R8 subdivision, no parks or open space.
So how long would you expect, given approval, that it would take to build this out? Do you have any feel for that at all?
Well, there's, as you know, there's some existing buildings on the site. So quite a bit of demolition and land development that will have to take place before any home construction begins. We would anticipate home construction starting next year at this rate because we've got to go through some preliminary and final plat approval processes with the city and then get into land development construction. So home construction would start next year and then the market will really dictate how quickly we move. We're not really a spec builder, so we'll have a model home and most of this will be a pre-sale semi-custom design process with home buyers.
Any additional questions for the applicant? Okay.
So TriPoint will build all of the homes, is that what you're saying?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay. So someone can buy a lot and bring their own contractor, they'd have to go through TriPoint.
No, we're a home builder.
Gotcha.
Okay. Thank you. We'll let you know.
Thank you. Happy to answer any questions after the hearing.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Ready to move on to public hearing? Any comments or any?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right, then we're going to open this meeting up to public comments. If you could come forward and state your name and please limit your comments to 3 minutes, we will go ahead and turn that over to y'all to come forward.
Good evening. My name is Dave Noble. I'm a resident of Da Vinci. I am also the acting president of the HOA at Da Vinci. I want to ask you a couple of questions about something that I've never heard any of you talk about, nor the city council. As you well know, with an R8, there are no requirements for there to be an HOA on this ordinance. TriPoint, as the builder, will put together a set of covenants for everybody to sign. And those documents are similar to the ones that all of us that bought a home in Da Vinci signed with Ivory Homes when they built Da Vinci. Those covenants are designed to protect the builder from things not looking great so they can build beautiful homes. Now, we've spent a great deal of time in Da Vinci investigating Tri-Point long before you even had your first hearing. We're pleased with the builder. We're pleased with everything they do. We've investigated all sorts of things that they've done around the country. As of you know, right now, they haven't built a home in Utah. But we're pleased with that, and we're all in favor of it. There'll be a set of covenants that everybody that's interested in buying a home there will sign. But the day that Tri-Point walks out of this neighborhood, that's the end of any enforcement agency that keeps this neighborhood looking beautiful and wonderful and clean and nice. And an R8 has no requirement for there to be an HOA. And therefore, we at Da Vinci, although we want you to approve it, we would ask that you make some change to protect the neighborhoods that are HOAs. There are two great HOAs that sit on the east side of this subdivision, Da Vinci and Strawberry Fields. There's another one being built as well. We want to be sure that long-term, after Tri-Point finishes building a beautiful neighborhood, and we support them, that it also looks nice as well. I have two jobs as an HOA president. Number one, keep my neighborhood looking really, really great. And number two, increase the property values over time. We've done that. If there's a neighborhood that doesn't do that, that's right across the street, it won't help at all. It'll hurt our neighborhood. And we ask at Da Vinci and Strawberry Fields, where we have two active and good, high-quality HOAs, that you reconsider this R8 designation that does not require there to be an HOA. Now, could you have an HOA in long-term that does a lousy job? You bet. They're all over Orem and all over the rest of the world, for that matter. There are great HOAs and there are bad HOAs. We hope it'll be a great one. We hope that the neighborhood looks great long-term. We aren't interested in the present, which is everything you guys have ever talked about. You've been worried about the lot size. All we ever hear about when I come
Thank
here
you.
is the lot size. So please consider the possibility of designating this as an HOA as well.
Thank you.
So my name is Jim Chatterley. My first concern is that the acoustics in this room are terrible. I'm sitting in the front row and I can hardly understand anything that's any of the members are commenting about, let alone even this fellow that was talking. So as a civil engineer, I've had a number of similar projects in California and Oregon that I've had to try to work through. And so I empathize with the Mueller Group, with the potential developers, and obviously the history of Da Vinci. I live across the street on 12th North, so I'm quite familiar with the logistics that have been addressed in the earlier meetings. I've made a number of attempts to meet with Tri-Point and try to use some of my experience, but I think it's much misleading because there's a number of engineering issues that have to be addressed. I have a drawing here of an easement 20-foot wide that's north and south, but none of the streets show that that easement or stormwater drain 20-foot wide are aligned with that. Furthermore, we know that any of these projects have to have a stormwater litigation plan to deal with the stormwater. And yes, we had a large storm this past summer. And yes, there was a lot of water in other words, the existing development doesn't address the stormwater detention that is current in the code. So I have a suggestion. I think it's a great opportunity for the city of Orem to work with Mueller Group to arrange the purchase of what I call the linear park along the west side of the property. It's already a low elevation and could serve not only as a park, but a detention basin for this 23 acres and for what may occur north if the existing buildings are not leased. So that would be an opportunity to not only deal with the logistics, but then refine the costs for the developer for the remaining properties. I also have a concept design in which there would be about 90% of the existing landscape to be retained, retaining the existing drainage to the properties to the south, using one-way alleys to serve the properties, and slab on grade foundations,
Thank you.
therefore reducing the cost of the project.
Thank you. Okay, would anyone else like to come forward for the public hearing regarding this item? Okay, then we will close the public hearing at this time, and we will start discussion as a planning commission. So we can start with motion, we can just start with discussion. What do we have? Oh, I guess there was the one question that the first gentleman asked about HOA and covenants, but currently under our law, we don't have anything that requires that for an R8. And is there any intention to have an HOA in this community or not?
You're correct. There is no requirement within the ordinance. We don't anticipate an HOA. However, we will record private covenants prior to selling a home that will define landscape, street tree, garbage can, parking requirements. So those covenants will be in place, but there will not be any active HOA.
Thank you.
I think it's important to consider, as a former member of the Beautification Commission, the city does also have codes in place that have bare minimum requirements.
I thought you had something to say. All right. Okay. All right.
I always have something to say.
Thank you.
Whether it's important is another discussion.
Okay. So do we have a motion on this item or do we want to start discussion?
Well, I was just
Either way,
gonna.
go forth. Discuss.
So I was just gonna point out, this is a much better plan than I've ever seen from them. I still don't agree with it. I think that, as we discussed in the pre-meeting, we need to discuss about usages and what we have within the city, the things we need. As we discuss all the time, we don't have open land anymore. So we give it up, we have no professional services anymore. You know, that's just the gist of it. We can, I think that while we protect our neighborhoods, we also need to protect our commercial corridors. We need to protect what professional services we have and not get out of balance. Because I think that is the killer to the city, is for us to get lopsided and out of balance. We would be hammered if we're nothing but R8 and we didn't take care of professional services and commercial. Just as we would be useless if all as we were commercial and professional services. That's not a city, that's just a mall. So I don't support moving in this direction for that very reason.
Okay.
So, excuse me, I would just offer the comment that, excuse me, allergy time of year. Every time Tri-Point Homes has come and presented potential designs, we've told them if they come back with R8, we would look favorably upon it. Based on that, I think for the integrity of our commission, we need to stick to what we've said. I know I agree with what dear friend here, Mike, is saying, but at the same time, there's nothing like that on the immediate horizon and probably won't be for years, frankly. In the meantime, the owner has a right to do with his property as he pleases. So with that said, I think Tri-Point has done everything that we've asked them to do. And personally, I don't favor the city getting I've served on HOA boards. I don't think it's the city's business to get into that. I believe existing code and covenants that might be recorded are adequate. And I don't think we should be in the business of dictating HOAs, which many people have mixed feelings about to begin with. So that's what I'd offer. I think they've done everything we've asked them to do.
I concur with your well-spoken sentiments, Rod, and I'm impressed. The lot sizes are really bigger than 8,000 square feet. It would seem to me that this would be a nice residential development, single-family development. And I well understand where Mike is coming from. You have so much available space, and we're running out of it.
I think we've run out of it.
Well, okay. But there's this need for single family homes, and they're ready to move forward with this. And it looks like it would be a wonderful development to me.
Well, I agree with what Rod said, other than my statement last time was exactly as it was today.
I remember
said-
your statement.
I
as
said
well.
they were more likely to get approval for an R8, but I didn't support it. So,
Tracking. That's been your constant position, agreed.
And I think that's consistent with, like, we've been talking about, that's consistent with what city council has indicated. That's what we talked about when it came back to us again. And I mean, I feel the same way. There's aspects of this I don't like. I think we still need our professional services. I think we need to consider that. As I said last time, I still am very sad about losing all those trees, because those are 40-year-old trees that we can't get back for 40 years. And I don't know where there's another density outside of an orchard of a strip of trees in Orem, especially on the east side over there. And that's hard to say, let's just chop down a bunch of our trees. But again, there are bigger issues. Our job is to look and say, okay, how does this fit? How does this look in Orem? How does it affect the community? And whether I like it or not is less important than they've kind of met the requirements that we've put before them.
yeah, it wasn't about like it or not. I mean, I do like it. I just, as for need, as we were discussing in the general plan, I think that we're talking about getting into that lopsided state is my point.
And I concur with that.
Yeah, so that's where my stance runs from, so.
Rod?
So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. I recommend approval, the proposed,
Canyon Park.
whatever the
Canyon
right
Park.
verbiage is, the Canyon Park, Canyon Tech Park, rezoning from PD6 to R8. Is that the right wording?
I second your motion.
Okay, Rod moved and Jim seconded that we forward a positive recommendation to city council of the rezoning of this property from the PD6 to the R8. Do you want to say anything more, or do we have anyone who wants? Okay. Then we'll go to vote.
Aye.
Hazen? Rod?
Aye.
Jerry?
I,
Mike?
Nay.
Jim?
Aye.
Nay.
Britton?
Nay.
Nay? Aye. We will, so that's 5-2, thank you. And a positive recommendation will be forwarded to city council, so. And just as explained, this is a recommendation and the city council will make the final determination. Has that been scheduled for city council yet?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
We'll get it.
So notice will be forthcoming on that. Okay, then we will move on to item 4.2, which was a continued public hearing from our last meeting about a text amendment regarding staff proposal to amend Article 22-14-20-I and 22-1-5G by changing the following neighborhood meeting requirements: notice distance and deadlines, permissible meeting dates, and criteria for renoticing and supplemental meetings.
Okay, thank you. I just want to first point out that the reference that I was looking for so long while I made you wait was in my slideshow. So that's how great I am, just so you know. some of the things that we talked about last time, just to briefly go over that and talk about the texts. We talked about increasing the distance for all of them to 1,000 feet. And then we talked about maybe increasing that more to 2,000 feet, or to looking at obstructions of that, like large plots of land or infrastructure pieces. I started to draft some text around that. It's awkward to write, and I haven't got anything that's workable or meaningful yet in that regard. So I'm still looking at that and trying to I couldn't find a reference anywhere from anybody in any code about dealing with impediments to that notice that made any sense. So I'm still working on that. So I apologize. I don't have that ready for you tonight. Another thing that we talked about were templates. And in conversations about templates for the notice and conversation about templates for the minutes. I had some thoughts about that as I was rambling about them. Becca made it happen. So I want to look at that real quick for you. A potential outline for meeting minutes that we could give to people as a part of the packet and referenced in the text would be something like this. So they state a location, they have a time starting, they give the name of the proposal as well, so that we have a reference to the project. And then the presenter is named and a summary of those items is given, and we want a copy of that presentation to be part of this. So if there are slides shown, they should be attached to those minutes, much the way that we would do as staff. So slides that they show or materials that they show, they attach to those minutes. So it's part of that record that comes to you. So you know that they showed what they are showing to you or something very, very similar. That helps that be sort of verified. And then when it's open for comment, this is just kind of a basic thing, and it can get difficult when there are lots of people, but it can be done in lots of different ways. But a very simple name of that commenter and a summary of what they said, just at least a brief summary of what that person said, as opposed to there were 20 people in attendance, everybody loved it or everybody hated it or whatever that might be. An example of those kind of comments would be something like is below. Jane Doe, Jane thought there was too much traffic. This is coincidental, by the way. It's not. It's typical, but coincidental. There was too much traffic on the road, did not like the plan. She would like a wall on the south side. And then the comments are closed, and the presenter, if he made any final remarks, that should be put in there too. If people had questions, it should be included in their comments. It can be brief, but it needs to be in there. So do you feel like that would direct them enough to give you the kind of information that you want, even if it's very brief?
Yeah, I like this.
I think it's very well done. Gosh, who did this?
That would be Becca.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Nice job.
I did contribute by saying, how the heck am I going to do a template for minutes? And,
Maybe a small suggestion would be have a suggestion to, like, how are they going to keep track of this? Maybe take a recorder.
yeah.
So just little notes for them on how to fulfill this action. Here's some tools that you might want to use, or
Yeah, it can be kind of a foreign idea to people
Yeah.
to how
or
to
even,
make this
you,
happen.
you could even do a Zoom where you're recording, even though there's nobody on the other end, you're recording the meeting anyway.
Mhm.
So
We could include some tips like that. That's not a bad idea.
just little things so that they can go back through, because sometimes the meetings get really hectic, and I know I wouldn't be able to keep down all the minutes, so
Right.
notes.
If this is a good, we wouldn't include this in the text, but it would be referenced.
Yeah,
Use in the part where you have to take minutes, we would just reference attachment, whatever, and you use that. So that's your format, and provide it in that format. So we see it in kind of a uniform way all the time, and you know what you're looking for. That makes sense? Okay.
Hasten?
Is having a roster of the attendee a mandatory thing or is it an optional?
Sorry, having
A roster.
a
of all
roster,
the
yeah.
attendee. Is that a mandatory, is
Yeah,
mandatory?
it's separate from the minutes requirement. So
Okay.
they need to
So
provide a list of
They
everyone.
have who
attending.
attended.
Yeah.
So to build on that, would there a space next to their name, the comment and in favor or against check mark?
I don't know that they vote. That part of like, are you in favor or against it is not necessarily spelled out.
It's not, but we see that quite often. And in fact, again, I go to
Yeah.
our infamous 2000 South property where he said 42 were in favor and we actually found out 42 were not in favor
Oh, sure.
after the fact. So
Yeah,
there
just
would be,
a table so they check when they write their name.
when they write their name in favor or again, after the fact, they just, and then their comment, write down their comment in there. So we have an actual record, not he says, she says.
But then if.
Not the things are against the proposed amendment are omitted by, just like in the same language. We took notes, for gathering information purposes where we have no idea what the notes are.
Well, then you have some that would be in favor if conditions were met, you see, so it
Some
would be-
comment.
Yeah,
Rebecca?
I just want to say, this is kind of based off of the types of minutes that I do for these. So these are based off of like the minimum state requirements that I have to meet when I'm writing minutes for any of our public hearings. So if you want to go a little bit, more, that's okay. But this is just based off of the basics that I have to collect and get. And then of course the ones that you guys get to review and vote on.
So I think keeping good record will give us an empirical evidence of the sentiment of the neighborhood instead of opinions.
And I think my only concern about the for and against thing is that starts shifting it to make it seem like the neighbors get to vote whether they like this or not.
sure.
And whether
I
or
see your
not,
point, yeah.
whether or not it is, but I agree with you. I like to have a better sense of the overall sentiment because like I said, the one we had on item 4.1, I read and I was like,
But generally, from
No.
reading these in the past, I can tell if they're for or against it. I mean, just from their comments.
but to have it more spelled out that they need to be listing off who's commenting and how and what.
Instead of approve or against, you made a comment line so people could make a,
Can say whatever you want. But
Mike
but it's-
Carpenter, I was happy with what they presented, or I didn't feel like they were being honest, that's just my comment. Being at the meeting, so that gives them just to see it's not a yes or no, it's just a comment that they made about the meeting when they were there.
Or an option to provide written comments.
Yeah,
Is that kind of what?
yeah, just the whole point is to gauge the feedback and inform the public as well as understand what the public's concerns are, right?
So these comments are actually captured by the host of the meeting. So what he says may not actually be really what was said, I guess.
The only way is to have it video recorded and we watch
That's
each of the
right.
meetings.
That's right. So, but
So they're always going to be biased in the sense that it's
But-
always going to be for the perspective of who writes it.
that's right. But the comments are not going to be written by the people that make the comments. I mean, so I don't know if that would be a totally different initiative to have something like that. But,
I was just talking about a comment next to your signature,
okay.
so that they are
So-
actually making that comment on the
So
way out or
the,
the way in or whatever.
so would you provide something now the template that they're providing is, you'll, I don't know how
This is
you,
their minutes.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But what they're to provide to us, how would you capture that if people wanted to make comments?
Well, they have to provide us with a role.
Right,
and sign
right.
in. So instead of it's just a grid, name, comment, name, comment, name, comment.
And the comments captured by the attendee, by the
individual
host.
who's signing
host
their
of the-
name.
Okay,
So you're saying, just for clarity, you're saying that then the roster,
Yes.
if it included a comment line, might capture comments from folks who didn't like stand up in the meeting and say something that.
Yeah, I was just
That's-
building off
that gets you-
Hastings' thought.
It gets you kind of I think that's a great idea, personally.
So you provide them a roster template. That's
So,
the comment section.
Just for clarification, I think these are all good discussions. We're talking about having the developer or whoever is notifying at the meeting, being responsible for the roster, collecting that information and turning it over.
They already are.
Right.
It's just providing a comment section on the roster for people to make a small statement or
Yeah, try.
if they want to.
Or
I just-
providing an opportunity for written.
Yes,
yeah.
I was just confirming
yes.
resources, because if, I'm clear in my mind now, thanks.
Okay.
I like that. That's really helpful, actually, guys. I think that's a great idea.
But I do love this. This is
Yeah.
good work. Okay.
There you go, Becca. Okay. With that said, I'll keep working on I'm running into the same problem with my template for a notice, but we'll be able to do one, and we want sort of similar amounts of detail. We want to make sure that the notice, we've seen the problems with them, that the notice isn't clear, it's not readable, or it doesn't contain the information to show people to help people make the decision whether they want to attend or not, or whether they're concerned or not. So I'm still working on that. And if you continue this one more time, I should have everything ready for you. We do have, I'm just trying to remember if there's anything else The other notes I had, those were the main differences. I'm still working on that again, that idea of increasing the ability of people to, the number of people that would get the notice. Still working on that. The language is really awkward. So, but I should be able with 2 more weeks to do that.
I think I suggested we go 3 weeks, not 2 weeks.
Yeah, we did. I've got that coming in too. I need a little more clarity on that. Is everybody okay with that?
You say,
We're going from postmarks, right?
Yeah, because
That's
I
my
mean,
question.
time to work its way through this system and
Through
then,
the postal system.
you
So-
know, I literally can get them like just 2 weeks after they're mailed sometimes. So it's I have 3 weeks, gives you plenty of time to plan and get a babysitter if you want to go to a neighborhood meeting. If you get it 3 days before, you may not be able to attend because you can't make arrangements.
So we want to say, and then to clarify, we would want to say postmarked 3 weeks before.
so you're going from 7 days then out of 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That gives it essentially a week to get there and 2 weeks for people to.
Yeah, I'm good with that personally.
Or if it's slow, a week and a half to get there and a
If
week
it's
and a
you,
half.
5
to-
days,
Yeah.
so we all have mail problems.
The
So,
the other challenge still remains from the notes is that it was brought up that not a lot of people get their mail. That would give plenty of people people time to get their mail who only get their mail every couple of weeks. It doesn't solve the problem of reaching people that just don't do mail, period.
Yeah.
But I haven't yet come up with a way to say you're going to have to text blast a bunch of people's information that you can't get. And I don't have a way to do that.
we have talked about posting it on the city website.
Yeah.
And making that more of a conspicuous thing on the city website. Does that need to be included in the statute as part of the notice requirement?
It would need to be included as a requirement
There's-
that they,
That falls on the city
Yeah.
to do.
and we have kind of traditionally, we have, I gather, traditionally, we have sort of stayed out of the neighborhood meetings other than to require that they happen. So that kind of puts us in the mix a little bit, saying it's on our website, but maybe it's just informational.
I think it should be just information only, because I think you guys need to know that too, based on other conversations we've had about notice. That I think that makes accountability for the developer and to make sure that they're informing y'all as well as making it public in other ways.
I'll talk to Teresa about how we would do that, whether what part of the city's website it would be in. I'm not sure it would be appropriate in the calendar of city meetings because it's not
No.
a city meeting, it's a neighborhood meeting, so it's got to be somewhere else.
But like on our planning, neighborhood meetings, these are the upcoming neighborhood meetings.
Yeah, we could do that. Even if it's on our page, we'll
Jared,
give a couple of examples.
if I could, maybe it's just a copy of what they send out.
Do they
If they're
provide you?
Since we're making requirements for what they're sending out,
Mhm.
that's going to meet a certain standard of quality, right? That y'all
A
are
digital
asking
yellow
for.
card.
So then we can just take a copy of what they send,
And post.
if I may, and then we could easily have that formatted on our page somewhere.
We can do that.
And these are the neighborhood notices. They aren't yellow cards yet.
Well,
Right.
I just said.
The yellow
digital
cards
Yellow card.
The yellow cards are a whole other problem that we're working on. So
We'll tackle next.
We wouldn't be forced into yellow on the digital version.
that's what I have for that. So I need another couple of weeks, if you would, I'm
It's looking
requesting a
good.
continuance. So. Any other questions about where we're at with it or other comments, things we ought to be thinking about that have come up as you talk about the notices the way we did today, for example?
Good. So we'd be looking for a motion of grave disappointment that we don't have it all.
It's not ready.
Thank you, Gary.
I move, I guess we're looking for a motion on this.
We can,
Motion.
I
We
motion
need-
we continue.
yeah, we need motion, or that. We have to continue it because, no.
Motion for adulation for the progress made,
Thank you, Mike.
because I appreciate what you've done. I think it's in the right direction, so.
I think we're getting there.
Yeah.
So Jim's making a motion to continue this item into the next meeting,
March 19th.
March 19th. Okay.
Are we okay with that or?
Yeah.
Too soon.
Okay.
Just a few days
Yeah, we
away.
should ask you, can you meet that deadline?
I'll just have
More than
Becca
that?
fix it. It's fine.
Becca
2
will
weeks.
fix it
Becca will
before
fix
she
it.
has a baby.
Now she's aware I need it fixed. She'll fix it 2 weeks.
When is the baby due, by the way?
So it can be public record. I I mean, she was supposed to come April 18th, but I think we just figured out we're gonna have to be inducing, so probably April 11th. So it keeps getting closer and closer and closer and, yeah.
You've got it all planned out. What time of the day?
Oh, oh man, I don't know quite yet. That's my next doctor's appointment.
So we're good until April 11th. This needs to be completed before, no, okay.
We'll be done on 19th.
Okay, so Jim has moved that we continue to March 19th
A second.
and Mike seconded. Is-
Aye.
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 Okay, item 4.2 is continued
Thank
to
you
the next
very
meeting.
much.
Gary, is there anything?
Yes. Some of you were able to take a tour of the city building. That's coming along. We're excited. We're moving forward on it. We will be shifting people over to the new building in kind of shifts and waves. As you can imagine, this process is going to take quite a while to do. And then this portion of the building is going to come down. There's going to be some remodeling at the library. So this is going to be a mess, this campus for a little while, but it's going to be fantastic. If those of you couldn't make it, but would still like a tour, send me an email and we'll see if we can't get you on a tour of the building. We're still working on making sure the HVAC, the audio visual is, well, and the air conditioning also, that everything's working. We have high hopes that it's going to be a much better situation. And again, we heard a comment tonight that it's difficult at times to hear and hear.
It is.
I think it will be a much better situation. So we're pretty positive. There are plans for a grand opening, and when those plans get solidified, we'll make sure you all know when that is and would love to have you come and celebrate that day with us, because it's been a lot of work by a lot of people for a long time.
And it continues.
And it will continue. But there's just so many exciting things when everything gets done. And you have this great facility and the Gold Star Memorial and the library and Orem Fest and Little League Baseball and all of the things going on. Man, what an exciting time for Orem City and everything going on here. So we'll let you know updates. And again, let me know if you would like a tour.
Thank you, Gary. All right, that's all. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
A motion that we adjourn?
I second that motion.
Okay, Brad moved and Jim seconded that we adjourn. Britton?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, our meeting's adjourned at 6:26 PM.
So Gary,